there is also the interesting question of how much he's listening to Mr. Biden. I mean, within 3 months, the Biden White House will be gone, and we don't know who will replace it, so to speak. So that this is a moment of great geopolitical uncertainty, to use a grand phrase. We're living in a vacuum where America is once again the only outside force that appears to be getting involved in any of these conflicts, despite what we all say about the decline of American power. When things like this happen, everyone looks to America to say, do this and don't do that. And America isn't in a position to do so.
Now, on the front page of the Times this morning, a picture of defiance. An Israeli family stands on top of an Iranian missile. The charred and twisted remains were shot down over the Negev desert in the southeast of the country. It's an amazing picture, actually. You can just see one member of the family helping a woman up as she climbs onto it, and they're all kind of dressed in shorts and T-shirts, just a kind of typical family, really, all ages, and they're climbing on top of it to show defiance. Meanwhile, President Biden has warned Israel not to hit Iranian nuclear sites. The Times' correspondent Richard Spencer is in Israel. He's been meeting Israeli soldiers who've been fighting in Lebanon against Hezbollah. Good morning to you, Richard.
Hi, good morning.
Tell us, first of all, how you got this really fascinating dispatch on the front of the Times today, and also what you're hearing this morning.
Yes, so I was up in the northern border area yesterday, and as I was driving up, early yesterday morning, I started getting messages from friends and on both sides of the border. I have friends back in Beirut as well, saying, first of all, saying that Hezbollah claimed to have beaten back a Israeli incursion over the border overnight. There was a battle near a Lebanese village called Edessa, which is right on the border, and then a Israeli contact said that he had heard the same, that his son was in the army, and had told him that this had gone on. So I just headed straight to that area as near I could get, and ended up at a hospital just as you could see helicopters coming in over the border to the hospital, and there were ambulances as well, ferrying the less badly injured in, and we managed to get to speak to a couple of these soldiers, as they were obviously the ones that only had minor wounds. I wasn't going to interrupt other people. And they told me, there'd been this big battle. One guy I spoke to had he'd been in a group of 12 who'd all been injured by a missile, presumably an anti-tank missile. That's what Hezbollah seemed to have been using. And one of his mates had been killed next to him. So it was a pretty dramatic account, and as you know, the IDF later said that they'd lost 8 men overnight, 6 in this particular battle, two somewhere else along the line of combat. This was quite an extensive battle. There were quite a lot of guys involved on both sides.
Is it a surprise that the loss of these 8 Israeli soldiers?
No, I think it'll come as a shock coming quite so soon. I mean, this is the first. Partly in some ways the IDF are victims of their own secrecy. Both sides tend to keep the whole zone closed now for journalists. I mean, understandably for safety reasons, but they're not saying a lot about what's going on in there. So when you do have a battle, then there are going to be casualties on both sides, which come sometimes as a bit of a shock. We do have this sort of the IDF has sort of cultivated this aura of invincibility, but of course, in any war, people will be killed on both sides. In particular, I think we're not surprised here in the sense that we know that southern Lebanon has been made a trap for the Israelis. I mean, that's the whole point of their operation, is that Hezbollah have been digging themselves in that tranche of southern Lebanon since 2006, the last ground incursion by the Israelis, and the Israelis lost more than 100 men then. In some senses, it is only to be expected.
And can you just explain the terrain involved here? Is this is it quite empty? Is it full of it full of tunnels? Is it residential in any way? Is it abandoned?
Yeah, as others have been saying for many decades, the tragedy is it's an incredibly beautiful landscape. These on both sides of the border. It's a biblical landscape, as we know. It's beautiful rolling hills, some bare, some forested, some with light scrub that would be used for grazing sheep, and indeed is farmed on both sides of the border. And there are settlements you'd expect, farming villages on both sides of the border, a couple of small towns leading down to the Sea of Galilee on the Israeli side and then to the west of the Mediterranean. It's an incredibly striking landscape, and constantly fought over. In the Lebanese villages, typically, Hezbollah have dug tunnels. They some of the tunnels are quite huge. It's like the Hamas network, to hide their arsenals and their weapons silos, and they normally dig from within a village, but not necessarily their access points into these tunnels.
And away from the area that you've been reporting on, everyone is pretty much waiting, obviously, for Israel's response to Iran after those missile strikes that were largely repelled. President Biden has warned Israel not to hit Iranian nuclear sites. What is your feeling about whether they would go ahead and do that anyway?
Yeah, I don't have exclusive insight to the mind of Benjamin Netanyahu. What I would say, he is normally cautious. He normally goes one level lower than he might do, and that his hardliners demand. So that would be good news for Mr. Biden. There is also the interesting question of how much he's listening to Mr. Biden. In 3 months, the Biden White House will be gone, and we don't know who will replace it, so to speak. So that this is a moment of great geopolitical uncertainty, to use a grand phrase. We're living in a vacuum where America is once again the only outside force that appears to be getting involved in any of these conflicts, despite what we all say about the decline of American power. When things like this happen, everyone looks to America to say do this and don't do that, and America isn't in a position to do so.
Right, yeah. Well, that's well put, Richard. Thank you very much. That's the Times correspondent, Richard Spencer, who's speaking to us from Israel.
Joe Biden has said he won't support Israel if it attacks Iran's nuclear weapons program. But given that Iran now seems to be on the back foot, isn't this exactly the time to stop them ever being able to threaten Israel and the West with the most dangerous weapons imaginable? Let's talk to Brigadier General Dr. Meir Elran, former Director of Military Intelligence for Israel. Good morning to you, Meir.
Good morning to you.
Do you think Israel will and can and should go after Iran's nuclear capability?
This is a very good question, and I don't think that there is a clear-cut kind of an answer to that. The point that I want to raise in this respect is that apparently this particular issue of how Israel should respond to the very broad and dramatic kind of a attack on it on October 1st, the question is very valid and raises lots of dilemmas. I want to suggest that one of the most important things for us right now is to consult, to coordinate with our ally, major ally, the United States of America. And I understand that this is exactly what's happening right now, despite of the fact that we are in the midst of a major holiday in Israel. This is the beginning of a new year for us, and we wish everybody a happy and stable and peaceful new year. So going back to the issue itself, I think that there are consultations going on now on what should be done and how it should be conducted, and not if. The question is how. And one of the options apparently is to, go ahead.
No, so I'm going to ask you that question of you consulting with the US, because the feeling has been Biden is a lame duck president. There will be a new president in 32 days' time or whatever it is. Does Israel actually care as much as it once did about the influence of America? Does it actually have to consult so closely with America, bearing in mind America's political situation?
I think that Israel needs very, yeah. There was some interruption in in your message. You asked whether Israel should consult with the lame
Yes.
duck administration. That was your question. Okay, my answer is completely and totally positive. I think you had to remember that President Biden is going to stay president of the United States of America until January 20th.
Yeah.
We have a lot of time ahead of us in this respect, and we have to provide ourselves with answers right now. He's the chief of staff. He's the person who is leading America, and he's the person who is responsible for the activities of CENTCOM. This is the Central American Command, which coordinates all the forces in our area. And we need to do that definitely. We cannot ignore them. We should not ignore them, and we do not ignore them. On the contrary, it is very important for Israel to coordinate with any president, and Joe Biden is the president of the United States. He has been a great supporter of Israel since October 7th, and he has helped us a lot, and he's going to help us also in this predicament. And absolutely, the United States is a key factor in this respect, whether it is participating, how it is participating, how it is supporting us. It's not only the United States. Remember, the United States being engaged in a military situation in the Middle East, in the Persian Gulf, involves also NATO countries, and involves also regional partners in the Middle East. So it's a major coalition that we're talking about against Iran, and all of them have to coordinate. Of course, primarily, it has to be taken place between the United States and Israel. Absolutely.
Interesting stuff. The internet's, I think, giving us a little bit of grief there, but we heard all of what you had to say there, Meir. It was really interesting. That's Brigadier General Dr. Meir Elran, former Director of Military Intelligence for Israel.